What is up, YouTube? It's your girl Evelyn, and I am back with the Season 3, Episode 6 recap of Killing Eve. As always, there will be spoilers, so proceed with caution. We are back in London, and Eve is visiting Nico in the hospital. That's right, Eve's hubby survived Dasha's pitchfork attack. Nico is unable to speak for obvious reasons, but that doesn't stop him from telling Eve to piss off forever via speak and spell. Villanelle is back from Grismet, but our favorite assassin still looks a bit shaken after last week's adventures in matricide. She's meeting with the 12, or more specifically, Helene, the sharp-dressed, red-heeled woman who gave Dasha the orders to drive a wedge between Eve and Villanelle. We are unsure of Helene's specific job title, but she appears to be a middleman of sorts for the 12. Helene excitedly tells Villanelle that her request to become a keeper has been granted, and even pops a bottle of bubbly to celebrate. She then gives Villanelle her first official assignment as a keeper: to dispatch of a high-profile Romanian politician. Villanelle immediately protests, telling Helene this is the same stuff she's been doing. Besides, she was told that as a keeper, she'd be the one giving the orders, not receiving them. Helene wants to know who gave her that information, but Villanelle swerves the question and takes the assignment, but not before telling Helene this is bullshit. The Bitter Pill Gang is hard at work, searching for a link between Nico's attempted murder and the 12's current string of assassinations. The most obvious link is Villanelle, but despite the evidence, Eve just isn't convinced. If there's one person Eve knows better than herself, it's Villanelle. The murder of Bertha Kruger also puzzles Eve. If Villanelle was in France killing Bertha Kruger, how could she be in Poland pitchforking Nico at the same time? After a quick snack break in which Eve goes one-on-one with a vending machine, the gang begins to make progress. They finally link the 1974 Olympic murder to Dasha, who we learn was a former KGB agent. Bear discovers that Dasha is currently residing in Barcelona, teaching gymnastics to kids, and it's clear Eve wants to find her. But before jumping on a plane to Barcelona, Eve interrogates Carolyn, who you'll remember was once the head of the MI6 Russian desk. Eve is convinced that Dasha is Villanelle's handler, and is beginning to believe it was she who attacked Nico, and not Villanelle. From Carolyn, we learned that Dasha was a high-ranking KGB agent, but was exiled for murdering one of her own. After Eve makes it clear she's going to Barcelona to find Dasha, Carolyn tells her to be careful, because Dasha is very, very dangerous. Konstantin is at Irina's hockey game, proudly cheering her on, when Villanelle's obnoxiously loud yelling and air horn drown him out. They have a sit-down, and it doesn't take long for Konstantin to notice that Villanelle is far from her normal, cheerful self. He correctly guesses that she killed her mother, and for the first time, he appears legitimately shocked. But Villanelle doesn't want to talk about her mother. She wants to talk about Konstantin's plan. It seems Konstantin took Irina's Episode 4 advice to heart, and all of his recent shady activities have been in service of a plan that will allow him and Irina to ditch his duplicitous life of crime and live happily ever after somewhere far away. And Villanelle wants in. After telling her no multiple times, Konstantin finally relents and promises that once he and Irina have gotten away safely, he'll send for Villanelle. Villanelle doesn't believe him, but Konstantin insists it's the only way. He then reminds Villanelle that if she does this, she will have to give up everything, including Eve. Carolyn is having a secret meeting with her boy Mike, who apparently has the phone record hookup. He gives her Kenny's phone records, and, surprise, surprise, Kenny made and received several calls to a Russian number right before his death. We then find out the reason for the cloak and dagger nature of the meeting. A week ago, Mike emailed Carolyn the same phone records, but mysteriously, she never received them. Fresh off of her secret meeting, Carolyn strolls into Paul's office and innocently inquires about the status of the phone records she now has in her possession. Paul waffles a bit, blaming Scotland Yard for the holdup, but promises her he's working on it. Carolyn straight up asks Paul if he's working for them, and Paul throws the question right back at her. They then have a cheerful chat about not trusting each other, and Paul leaves Carolyn to her new office. Irina has just been dropped off to school by her mother's insufferably nice boyfriend, when Villanelle pops up and offers to let her do whatever she wants if she ditches school and comes with her. Irina knows Villanelle is just digging for information about the plan, but she really wants to drive a car. During the joyride, Irina complains about her mother's annoyingly nice boyfriend, and Villanelle tells her to kill him, obviously. After some goading from Villanelle, Irina eventually lets it slip that she and Konstantin are going to Cuba. Speaking of Konstantin, he has a run-in with his old friend Carolyn, who offers to take him for a drive. But as Carolyn pushes the car to a dangerously high speed, it becomes apparent that she is far from happy with Konstantin. After instructing him to toss his wallet out the window, she demands to know what Konstantin wanted with her child. Konstantin realizes that his life is in actual danger and admits that Geraldine kissed him. And Carolyn's like, "Oh, I was actually talking about Kenny." It turns out the Russian number that Kenny called belonged to Konstantin. And Kenny wanted to know if Konstantin was his real father, because, as you'll remember, Carolyn was banging Konstantin during the 80s, which is when Kenny would have been conceived. Konstantin told Kenny that he didn't know whether or not he was his father. Carolyn, clearly expecting a different answer, abruptly stops the car and puts Konstantin out in the middle of nowhere. Carolyn is back home and finally ready to get into it with Geraldine. Their subsequent conversation sheds some light on their current dysfunctional relationship, and ultimately they both agree they only have each other now, and it's best if they learn to get along. But before the hallmark moment is over, Carolyn casually demands that Geraldine tell her all about her relationship with Konstantin. It's evening and Konstantin has returned from his hike to find Paul waiting for him in the dark. Turns out Carolyn was right to suspect Paul because he definitely appears to work for the 12. Paul tells Konstantin that Charles Kruger was not the $6 million embezzler. Konstantin asks if he can leave London now, since his job was to investigate Charles, but the investigation has now shifted to Charles's recently murdered widow Bertha. Konstantin's new assignment is to find the person who ordered the hit on Bertha, and Paul promises that if things go sideways, Konstantin will take the fall, not Paul. Eve has arrived at a bowling alley in Barcelona, where Dasha and her monogrammed tracksuit are in the middle of a game. No introductions are necessary, and the two begin to bowl. In between effortless strikes, Eve questions Dasha about Villanelle, and when she slyly lets it slip that Nico is still alive, Dasha nearly drops her bowling ball, confirming Eve's suspicions. Villanelle didn't pitchfork Nico, Dasha did. Dasha, annoyed that Eve is getting the upper hand, brings her down a notch and tells her that Villanelle has been promoted, therefore Eve will never be able to touch her now. Dasha insists that Eve cannot prevail against the 12 and warns her that she can be killed at any time. Villanelle is in Romania, disguised as a hairdresser, but our normally gleeful assassin just doesn't have the heart for the kill. She is uncharacteristically sloppy, and the target manages to stab her before she kills him. Not to mention, she leaves a trail of blood at the crime scene. Konstantin's meeting with Paul has catapulted the plan into action, and after frantically packing his suitcase, he calls Irina and tells her, "School's out early this year. Be ready." Dasha finds Villanelle lying on the bathroom floor of her villa, trying to unsuccessfully give herself stitches. A crying Villanelle tells Dasha she's done. She's leaving the 12 and she doesn't want to do this anymore. Dasha dismisses Villanelle's emotional plea, and after helping her with her stitches, tells Villanelle to clean herself up and she'll order a pizza. Konstantin is hiding in the shadows, waiting for Irina to sneak out in her mother's car. But her mother's nauseatingly nice boyfriend happens to be taking out the trash, and instead of waiting for him to go back inside, Irina takes Villanelle's advice and runs him over in front of a shocked Konstantin. And that is it for the recap. Thank you so much for watching. Tell me, do you think murdering her mother broke something inside of Villanelle? Is our favorite psychopath in danger of becoming normal? Also, what do you guys think about Nico being alive? Was it a bait and switch or more subverting of expectations? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week.